this partition will give us a place for the countertop to hook into and expand over the dishwasher. You're going to place it on this side. You go to step 1, which we're not doing. But if you're going to place it on this side, which we are, then you go to page 12. So I changed the orientation from what you first saw. So I switched where these brackets are going to go to the other side. So I just rotated that around. And you're going to need 2 of these brackets. That's going to be 100, 32, 27, 4. And then you're going to need 2 of these screws for each bracket, and that's going to be that 15, 19, 31 screw. So we're going to go ahead and screw these in. 1 bracket here, 1 bracket above. All right, so I'm just checking how tight those are, and then we'll move on to the next step. We got both brackets. All right, next step in the process, we're going to take this bracket. This is what takes the countertop. You want to make sure that the vertical slot is going to be what goes against this piece. And that's going to be 102, 720. And then it's going to take 2 of these screws, 1 for each one of these brackets, 100, 455, 14. Get these started. And this again is got to be on the side that the countertop's going to mount against. And you want to have that vertical slot that allows you to adjust it up and down to get it flush to the countertop. Thread that down. And we can adjust it later on as needed. And it shows that this is going to go in that first slot there, that first hole for the larger screw. I'm just going to run that in. So let's get that one in. Let's get it kind of snug, then we'll drill that hole. So this is at 7/64. Not going to go too far. Take our screwdriver. We'll run that down. In fact, all the legs we put on so far had that little slide that you put on with tape that you could use to slide over. This doesn't have it, and mainly because, what I think is because it turns in, it's going to be hard to see because the dishwasher is going to cover most of that. All right, there we go. So we drilled that, 7/64, and then we'll run that one down. Check how level it's going to be if we get it flush up against the wall. Again, we're not mounting anything yet. For the most part, we're centered. So now in step 4, it shows to install it like we did, but mark where the corner's at, and then use a level to make sure these are going to be level. We're going to do this a different way in that I'm going to put the countertop on as well. I'm still going to mark these because I'm going to mark them all the way down and try to get an idea of position, and then we can adjust the leg height up and down to get it level. But I'm also going to mark the foot location, and then once we do that, then we can take this little stopper, that's where the leg is going to slide in, and we can put it into place, and then we can mount it to the floor. I have a concrete floor. I do not have any way to mount that right now. I have to go get some hardware because it's going to fit right inside there, so you can mount it to the ground. But for me, I need something that will drill into that concrete and an anchor system. So I can put a little bolt to anchor that down. So perfect. Yeah, no, that's going to look really good. This shows to place the countertop and how to screw it in to these brackets that had the vertical slot. And it shows what to do if you have the floor or the bottom with the border on it. We don't have that. And then that should be it. That should conclude it. So I'm going to go ahead, put the countertop on, and then we'll use that to kind of level everything out. And then we'll take everything back apart and mount it to the wall. So we're going to do this in stages. All right, so we've got the countertop unwrapped. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of move it into position. Step 1, determine the length that you need. And then go in, use some tape once you've marked it. And then use that tape line, cut right down the middle of the tape. And then we'll take some glue, take one of those glue strips I just showed you, one of these here. Looks like it may have a glue backing, but if it doesn't, it says take glue and then adhere it. And then use some sort of scraper, flat edge to run that glue down. I'm going to check it with my square before I go through and do anything else. I'm going to go to 88 1/8. And that should keep us fairly flush with the wall. All right, so I've got my square on there. Then this end, the one that I cut, it's going to go up against the wall. That should look pretty good. We're going to cut this sucker off. So I had this rougher cut. So you see how large those teeth are? You want something with really small teeth so you won't get these bigger chips in your wood, especially when you're dealing with particle board. This is fine to cut a 2x4. That's not going to be safe. So this is a Dremel, and that blade is made for wood, but you can see how small the teeth are. And it'll do a pretty good cut without doing too much damage. The problem with this one is it wouldn't cut as deep. So I can get a blade that's like this with small little teeth every so often on my circular saw, and it does a better detailed cut. And for particle board, you won't get those chips like we saw in this one. It shows to use a contact adhesive and a scraper to scrape that down on the piece that's going to go on. I'm going to use that piece of wood that we cut off, and I'm also going to use this as my scraper so I don't have to clean up any other tools. So this is liquid nail. It's a really good adhesive. And step 4, it shows to make sure you got it all centered up. And you want to make sure you have some overlap. And then after that glue dries, we're going to cut this off. So we're going to have to stop here for today because we're going to have to give this time to dry. So I'm going to let it dry overnight, and this time tomorrow I'll work on doing these steps. So I want to make sure I have overlap from the top and at the bottom, and it sands really good too. So it sands down. We'll make sure it's not crooked. Looks pretty good. I'm going to press it down and make sure I've got overlap between it, and I'm going to clean the residual glue off. A sponge here, and just kind of wipe off any glue that I can see. This stuff scratches off pretty easy too. Now we've got to cut that off, and it shows cutting from the back side so that you can get close to the countertop as possible. And then once we get this trimmed up, we're going to take a razor blade here in step 6 and trim along the top edge. And once we get that done, then we got to take some sandpaper and sand that down. That would give me a nice straight cut. And then we'll trim that up here. I'm getting into the glue a little bit, so it's a little hard to trim. That'll be easy now to kind of sand down. I'm going to go do the other side. Off the excess. I'm using my knife. If you don't have a sharp knife, use a razor. But like I said before, I just sharpened my knife, so I know it's pretty sharp. So I've got a pretty rough grit on this side, pretty fine grit on the other. I would not use an electric belt sander or anything like that because it'll go too fast, and it'll be, by the time you realize you've gone too far, it'll be too late. So I definitely do this by hand. Just going to round those edges a little bit. And then I'm going to move this out of the way until we need it again. What I want to do is make sure I've got that pushed as far as I can go that direction. And I make sure that all of these are lined up. So when it mounts in the countertop, that all of these are lined up. This one needs to come out just a little bit, not much. These into the wall where I can still adjust them. So I still have a little bit of leeway between those. I'm just checking to see if I need to move these forward or back. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to take all of these off because the screw we're going to use is going to mount. The screw we're going to use is going to mount in like that. So we have an electrical outlet here. You're going to have a stud on one side or the other, probably this side here, I'm pretty sure. And same thing, we have electrical outlet over here. Your stud is probably running right through here. So when this lights up, you're over that stud. And then when that centerpiece lights up, we know we're over that stud. Yeah, right there. And that's what we thought. So that's good because that's going to be right over one of the areas that we can drill into. So now we can mount. I got to take that hardware off at this one. I'm going to have to pull this dryer out. I'm going to have to pull this dishwasher out here in a minute to get that other one off and to finish the bottom portion of it. All right, so we know we have a stud right there. We're going to go ahead and try to drill into that. All right, that looks good. Illustration, it shows not to use a drywall screw, but to use one with kind of an oval shape to the head. I've got to find some that are longer than that, probably twice as long. 2.5 inches is what I'm looking for, because that needs to fit in there. And then we can snap that cover over. So that's going to cover up that larger hole that you see here. And that'll snap in and allow us to kind of lock that screw into place without it pulling through the wood. All right, so now we got that on, and we can just snap that cover into place. And that should keep it nice and snug. Now we're going to go through and do all of those. Also, going back, if you don't go through here, it says to use a washer so the screw doesn't pull through, which is what we had to do on one. I had to put a washer in there because the stud was not aligned, and so we went through that backboard, but we used a washer. All right, that's good. Take this piece. All right, so I'm going to go in here and mark this again. I'm marking the edge so I know roughly where it's going to be, pretty darn close. And I want to mark both sides so I can just match that back up. And again, I'm going to end up painting over this, so I'm not too worried about it. Go ahead and get this mounted. I'm not going to plug in and install the dishwasher yet. That into place. All right, good. Good there. That's nice and secure. Slide this into place. Nothing's moved on that side, so we're good. There we go. That all looks good. All right, let's press that as far as it'll go. Let's make sure that is as far as it'll go there. Step 10, we've mounted that piece to the wall. Dishwasher's going to slide in there. We put our snaps on, so everything's good. Now all we got to do is run those screws, the ones that we've saved. It's going to be 100, 455, 14. We're going to run those in to those brackets that were adjustable, that had the vertical slot and then the horizontal slot on top. That's the horizontal is going to be what mounts into the countertop. We're going to go ahead and knock that step out. So I have 20 of those screws we just mentioned. I've counted up, and there are 18 slots up under here that I've got to mount to. And it could be just for a different orientation, or if you had the full cabinet, maybe you had more 24-inch sections or an 18-inch section in there. That may be why they give you more of these. So before we mount the countertop, I just want to make sure it's still level, which it is. All right, good. Each one of those screws, I've got 2 in the back here. Looks like I have 4 here. Here we have 4, 2 in the back, so 6 and 6 there. We've got 2 in the front there, 2 in the back, so 4 over here, and then 2 on the side. We'll start doing the rest of those. Now we're just finishing mounting the countertop. Initially I wasn't going to drill the holes, but then I found some of those tight spots. It was getting really difficult to get the screw to start, so I went ahead and just pre-drilled these holes in place. I'll go nice and slow. So I'll strip those threads out. See, at least here I can press down if I need to. That looks really good. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and let's reinstall everything. We are not going to hook up the dishwasher today, but we are going to put it back in place just to make sure everything fits. All right, so we've still got to adjust those cabinets, but because we're still going to be moving stuff around, I'm going to do that very last. So that all fits in. That looks good. I'm going to leave that on for now just because we'll be moving things around. But I think I'll just move this out of the way so that you can kind of see what it looks like with the current install. I'll go in and do all the caulking, but I want to do that last. We've got to cut the hole for the sink. We have to wire up the dishwasher. We're going to wire up the dishwasher next. And it did not come with a 120 volt hookup or hook in, plug in. You could direct wire it if you wanted to, but I don't want to do that. I want a way to plug it in and then slide it into place.